Hi everyone, welcome back again. Still a lot of screens off, so hoping that folks are there. And that's, oh, you don't have to turn your screen on, but I'm gonna start anyway, just assuming that you're there. When we're on retreat together and we're sitting in a circle or in a Dharma hall, and you can really know all those fine details, like when everybody's really settled down, and you can wait for all of that because that is a little bit different than being online. Uh, so let's listen to the bell and come home to our breathing. Back in October, middle of October, I woke up in the middle of the night feeling something on my shoulder, and by the small light of my phone, I looked down and I saw it a tick right here on my shoulder, and then just pulled it out, dropped it out the window. Didn't think much of it. A couple weeks later, my family was visiting. Um, they took that chance, came across country to spend some time. I live next door to my mom, so we're like a little pod of our family, and then my other family members all live far away. And so they were coming, and they were coming mainly to see my mom because she was, you know, it's been hard this year, and they missed her. Unfortunately, coming out of that visit, my son and I developed flu symptoms and came back positive, and our whole little family pod went through COVID about a month ago. It was pretty exhausting. My son and I, who's 16, had it the worst in terms of the flu-like experience. 4 or 5 days of a high fever and stuff. It wasn't the worst flu that I've had, but it wasn't very easy. It wasn't pleasant at all. But it's been several weeks of slowly coming out of that, and for the last 10 days I felt pretty much 100%. That was at the beginning of November when that happened. But simultaneously with the development of the COVID symptoms, I got this massive rash coming on my shoulder. So I'm also today just finishing the 21-day course of antibiotics for Lyme because it's been quite a month. And my stomach is not very happy with all of the antibiotics that have been coming through my system, and But being a practitioner, right, I'm holding all these things in awareness while going through them, and also seeking actively to open space to understand what I'm experiencing and the kind of reactions I have and the kind of suffering that I'm having, and to learn from it. And a lot of time lying quietly with myself, just being there with nothing going on. And especially when the flu was really strong, um, you don't even want to distract yourself. You just focused on being sick. And in that space, you can really get in touch with the subtleties of your body and your consciousness. Um, it's like forced deep concentration. We try to do that out of our own will and endeavor, when we're not sick, when we're not forced in meditation practice. To some extent, we try to really develop that kind of concentration, but sometimes there are conditions in our life which bring it to us. One of the things that I spent a lot of time with in the last month is an awareness of stress, the experience of stress. And I think humanity in general is really starting to understand suffering much more than ever before, particularly through those who are working actively in trauma. Trauma studies have like made leaps and bounds in the last couple of decades. Commonly, up until recently, we always referred to trauma as something that came out of a particular traumatic incident or several, right? And like the PTSD experience. But we're now, as humanity, discovering that there's all different kinds of traumas, and essentially what it is stress, right? Either a ton of stress all at once, or a little tiny bit of stress over many years even that's unattended, right? Becomes a traumatic and a formative experience for us, settles itself in deeply to patterns of how we behave and how we react. I spent a lot of time on that edge with myself in the last month of noticing all the ways in which I become tense, and then all the ways and all the moments, opportunities I have to let go of that tension, to release it. And the practices that we're doing in this retreat are absolutely essential for working with any level of stress, whether you consider it your day-to-day levels of up and downs, or whether it's deep trauma and patterns from a lifetime or your parents' lifetime or generations ago, right? We all carry the deep print of the life experience of our ancestors in us. So whatever level you might be holding in that particular moment or aware of in that particular moment, these practices are what enable us to be there and to offer an alternative to simply closing down, becoming more tense, or staying disconnected and unable to empathize or feel, right? We can change that experience with these very simple practices. Sometimes it takes a long time, and there's so many hundreds of layers of releasing and relaxing to do. But these practices are what enable us to do that. When the Buddha taught about conscious breathing, he always taught it in relationship to other practices that he offered also. So the sutra, the little piece of the sutra that I read during our meditation a short time ago was the specific instructions around those 16 breathings. But I want to point out, for those of you who aren't familiar with this, a couple of things about that. And at the end of the retreat, I'll actually copy you on a whole bunch of notes about these things, so you can have that structure and stuff there. But I don't want you to have to like try to pen things down too much right now and worry about grasping the ideas. Just listen and hear this. So the 16 breathings are 4 sets of 4. And they have to do with being present in in relationship to different parts of our being, different layers of our being. And when the Buddha talked about the practice of mindfulness, he talked about it in 4 layers, right? And the 16 breathings line up with the 4 layers of the practice of mindfulness. The first layer is the practice of being with our physical body. So in those breathings you see simply breathing in and breathing out and being mindful of your breath is being mindful of an activity in your body, right? It's being mindful in your body. But then he extends it to be aware of your whole body and offer your whole body the chance to relax, right? And so those first 4 breathings are about being present, being mindful, aware, and inviting a wholesome result of that awareness, the relaxation, the release of tension, right? Inviting that into your body. So the first 4 have to do with the physical body. The second 4 breathings, 5, 6, 7, and 8, of those 16, have to do with the experience of feeling, of sensation. And a little note here, just to clarify that feeling, sensation here is different from, it's not separate from, but it's slightly different use of the word of feeling than we often use in modern life. And that's why I always say feeling, sensation, like sensations in that sense of feeling. The feelings that arise out of your present moment experience, the sensations you're having in your present moment experience are what the Buddha is referring to here in the realm of feeling. Not necessarily referring to feelings like, I feel angry, right? Whereas anger has a whole story and a large mental component to it, and it does impact the sensations we're having. It's more than that. It's more than just the sensations. There's a whole bunch more going on there. So in this practice, we draw our attention, our awareness specifically to the sensory experience of feeling in this moment. It's one of the most grounding and stabilizing practices we can do. And already when we're doing mindfulness of the body, we're doing that. Because how are we knowing our body? We're feeling it, right? We might look at it, but we also feel it, right? We sense the experience of our body. And so these 4 have to do with the realm of feeling. And these 4 breaths are very interesting. So we want to feel joyful. We want to feel happy. Remember last night I offered those 2 breaths to enjoy. Practice enjoyment breathing, right? To enjoy the sensory experience you're having. Allow that really to take shape. And don't just run to the things you don't like or the things you're struggling with, but calm your mind down and really feel the pleasure of releasing tension. Feel the enjoyment that you get from the beautiful spectrum of colors on the flower petal, right? Those sorts of things. These 4 breathings are about coming into the feeling dimension of our experience as human beings, the sensory experience. And when that really goes deeper, it becomes happiness, contentment, ease, peacefulness, fulfillment, right? And to help that practice, the Buddha uses in the 7th and 8th breathings this be aware of your mental formations. So the kinds of formed patterns of mental activity, like I'm self-critical in this moment. I'm really being hard on myself in my thinking is a kind of mental formation. And when that happens, to be aware of it and to offer it the opportunity to calm down. But we do this, we are aware of our emotional experience, right? By inviting the story, the mental story, to calm down and simply feel what's underneath the story. Right? Many of you know this as the practice of embracing. right? A difficult emotion comes up, and we try not to run away in our minds with the story of righteousness or the story of injustice or the story of anger that's there, and instead accept that it's there and just simply hold what it feels like and be present without being carried away in the agitation of the mind. To be present and to embrace that difficult feeling, that painful sensation, instead of running from it, covering it up, or trying to give it to somebody else. Sometimes we think we'll feel better by making someone else suffer as much as we're suffering, right? That's what anger is all about. I'm gonna get it to you. Um, when that happens, right? Instead of going down that road of pouring out our suffering, right? We see, oh, this hurts so much, and we learn how to be there and hold it, just as if it was like someone else, like a friend of ours, or a child, or a family member, someone we cared very deeply about, and we see them suffering so much, see them so upset, right? You don't want to like agitate that upsetness more. You want to take them in your arms. You want to let them know that, wow, that must really hurt, and I've got you. I'm here with you. I'll hold you. I'll be with you. That kind of energy is the energy that the Buddha invites us to use in mindfulness of feeling, and in these 4 breaths, the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, is directly about that. The next 4 breathings, 9, 10, 11, and 12, have to do with mindfulness of the mind and mental activity, right? And here is where we go directly to an awareness of the kinds of thoughts we're having and the nature of those thoughts. It means, what direction are they taking us? Are they taking us down the road of agitation and anger or sadness or overwhelm? Is that the story we're telling ourselves inside with our thoughts? Is that the story we're building up by listening to these different conversations around us in the media or with friends? Is that building up a track of a mental track of suffering? Or are we building a mental story of well-being, right? And because we are mindful of our thinking, we can begin to learn what sorts of thoughts bring us towards suffering and what sorts of thoughts bring us towards well-being. And eventually then we'll be able to add something in. So as the story of suffering unfolds and we're going, wow, I'm really nourishing my suffering right now with this train of thought. It's going to carry me down those tracks. Well, now that I see it, I have the opportunity to offer a different kind of thought, right? We refrain from going down that one track and start moving down another. I'm going to come back to this in a couple minutes, because that's really what the heart of today's talk is about. So 8, 9, 10, and 11. 9, 10, 11, and 12 are about being aware of the mind and bringing it in a direction of wholesomeness. And here the words of the sutra said, I make my mind happy, or I gladden my mind. I like the expression gladdening. The practice of gladdening the mind, right? To bring my mind, instead of following the track of suffering, to move it towards the track of well-being. And that's specifically what's indicated with the breathings. And there are another pair of breathings in there that talk about concentrating the mind, really going into a one-pointed focus, and in so doing, liberating the mind. Because the more we learn to be the author of our thoughts, rather than our thoughts telling us what direction to go, we move the thoughts in the direction we'd like to go. The more we can develop that capacity of concentration, the more free we are. Free from our habit energies, free from our ancestors' habit energies, right? And actually we build new habit energies, right? That hopefully, if they're really wholesome, will become the habit energies of our descendants. So their ancestors will have given them some good seeds through our practice, right? That's the track here. that's the mindfulness of the mind and the activity of the mind. The third set, the third tetrad of breathings. The fourth set of four, 13 through 16, uh, is interesting and requires a little bit of um, I guess context in a way, and in a way I want to rewrite some of those words. So typically the fourth layer of mindfulness in Buddhism is taught as mindfulness of the objects of mind, meaning the objects of our awareness, which is basically everything. So things is the word used, dharmas. Here, not dharma as in dharma teaching, the formal teaching of Buddhism or of a spiritual practice, but dharmas in the lowercase sense, which is simply referring to phenomena, anything. So to become aware of anything. But the way the Buddha taught it is actually about how to develop a deep understanding of things. Not simply to be aware of things. That's already taught in the body, in the feelings, in the mind. I guess the fourth set also invites you to be aware of the body, feelings, and minds of other people, which is quite wonderful, right? So anything inside and around you can be the object of your awareness. So this fourth set is really about life and the world, all things. But specifically, it's about learning how to look deeply into those things and understand them deeply. And in the teachings on mindfulness, it goes in that direction. And in the teachings on conscious breathing, it's very specific. And the 13th breath is look deeply into things to see how they are impermanent, how they're always changing. And if you do that, you get the 14th breath, which is you will see the fading of your attachment to them. Your desire, your grasping for a particular outcome will change. It will soften. It will make space for something new because you've looked deeply and understood something important about the nature of the object of your looking. So we're really in the fourth set of breathings, developing our understanding, learning to look deeply into things. Right? It's a little bit more than just saying mindfulness of things or mindfulness of the world or being aware of the objects of your mind. It's actually to look deeply and understand more deeply. And through that understanding, be liberated from attachment, aversion, from hatred, from fear. Right? That's all in these four breathings. So this is pretty important practice. The 15th and the 16th, the last two, are another pair of looking deeply. They talk about going into seeing the deep nature of no beginning and no end. And we'll come back to that later in the retreat. How one thing doesn't really have a beginning and an end. How there's only a process of continuation and transformation. And when we see that deeply, we're really not able to grasp on and be attached to or be afraid of these big transitions of sickness, of death, of fear and anxiety in our lives. The changing dynamic of our society and such, it really can be very upsetting in some ways, but through this practice, right, you can feel stable as the big changes happen. As what you thought was real is no longer real, as what you thought was solid is no longer solid, and the people you thought that you had in your life no longer appear to be there. By looking deeply, you can see otherwise. Right? And these breathings can do that. And so they help us to let go of our ideas and expectations, our views about how things are supposed to be, and instead drop into a true relationship with how things actually are. Looking deeply to develop understanding that liberates us from suffering. That's how I would define the last four breathings. I'm sorry, that's a long piece, but it's more than just be aware of life or be aware of things, right? So that's the structure of the 16 breathings. Body, feelings, mind, and looking deeply. 4, 4, 4, and 4. And there we have this presentation of this teaching, so beautiful, so practical. What I notice, and I think you'll notice practicing them too, is that it's very hard to separate out any one of them from any of the others. There's so much overlap. And really what it is just taking a slightly different stance, a new perspective on our whole experience of life. But because there are such clarity in this presentation, you really get to understand deeply all the different workings of who you are, who your friends and family are, how these relationships are built and unfolding, and then thus how to be a positive, supportive, and wholesome force in all of that. So the last piece about the sutra that I really want to share with you, and from here on in, I'm going to kind of drop the formal sutra study part, is the sentence before the 16 breathings, which sounds a little bit archaic, right? Old. Or maybe perhaps not applicable directly to us, especially since we're all confined to video screens in our living rooms. It is like this, bhikkhus. The practitioner goes into the forest, or to the foot of a tree, or to any deserted place, and sits stably in the lotus position, holding her, they, his body quite straight, and practices like this. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. Okay? Maybe you don't have a forest or a foot of a tree you can go to. Maybe you don't have a quite deserted place. Maybe you can't sit in the lotus position stably. I used to be able to do that, but I can't do it anymore. Maybe you don't even really feel like you can hold your body quite straight, right? So I just wanted to point out this sentence. Sometimes when we read something like that, we kind of just gloss over it and we go, okay, what's the part that I want to get onto something that actually is meaningful for me? It just requires a little bit of updating or translating. But it is a very important statement. Goes to the forest or the foot of a tree or to any deserted place and sits down to be stable and comfortable in order to be more present, fully present. This is important. What's your forest? Where is your forest? Where is your tree? Right? What is the environment that will support you? What is the state of mind that you need in order to really come home? Right? This is an outer and an inner exercise in really saying, I am not going to follow my habit energies right now. My habit energies to run and do. My habit energies to worry or to accomplish. My habit energies to, that make me feel like I'm always under the burden of this heavy life, this complex life, and these relationships which just constantly ask me for more and more, right? That's all your habit energy in your life. And this practice starts with saying, I'm going to drop that. I'm going to drop that. And I'm going to take care. I'm going to find a place that supports me, an environment that supports me outside, and I'm going to find an orientation inwardly that supports me in order to simply be here. Right? So I put down the distractions. I put down the restlessness. I choose that I'm not going to follow that path of my habit energies. And instead, I'm going to cultivate my freedom and my presence. Right? That's the starting point. Yeah. We start with freedom and presence. We end there too. Right? So today I want to be primarily concerned with some of the pieces of this practice, these 16 breathings that are centered on how we work with our mental activity. And to do so, we also need to work a lot with our heart and the way we feel. Because when you slow down your mental activity, that's what's going to arise, how you feel. Right? And we need to be prepared that that feeling may not be so pleasant, and to be able to hold it. We also need to be prepared for making the journey, that crossing from the path of suffering to gladdening the mind. There's a place in the sutra, I think, where it says something like, there can be no meditative stability without the practice of conscious breathing. It's a pretty strong statement. And meditative stability has a lot to do with understanding our mind and how it's working, being in a right relationship with our mind and what it's doing. Mental suffering is something we all have. And kind of going back to what I was saying about all the time I spent just being inside myself in the last month, really what I experienced very strongly is that mental suffering has a contracting quality to it, a grasping, a tightening, a tension in it. And when it happens, it seems like it's happening to us, right? Like it's afflicting us. And, excuse me, the word for suffering often used in Buddhist studies is klesha, which means affliction, right? Something's happening to us. It's out of our control. We're stuck in the rut of our suffering. For example, there's a trigger for an old depression that you have, right? And when that trigger comes, happens, manifests, the depression seems to take over and you're stuck in it, right? Sometimes a negative communication from a loved one, right, can wake up a pattern of suffering, of anxiety, of discomfort, of pain. Right? Just that tone of voice they use, and suddenly you're like, you know, you're closing down, right? And this is that fight or flight reaction in us, where we are gearing ourselves up for threat and for danger. We're getting into defense and ready mode, and that tension, that contraction, closes down our ability to stay connected to life. So it's really important that we learn to de-stress our mind, to soften those tensions, and to bring that space in there. When your mind jumps around on you, when it's running here and there and agitated in some way, there's no ease. There's no sense of peacefulness in us. It's agitation. It's painful, right? And we have to go there and acknowledge it in order to help it calm down. We can't have freedom in our mental agitation. We can't have freedom from our mental agitation. Suffering is there, and we can't get out of it. That's the experience of affliction, of klesha. We all know it. We all got it. We deal with it every day. So I'd like to guide you now in an exercise, because this is now my new favorite way to do this. Dharma talks can explain things, but doing meditations is better. I would like to guide you on a very simple meditation, but we'll go slow, through coming home to our senses, to the felt calm, to feeling, bringing calm and feeling ourselves through our senses in the present moment, and in so doing clarifying the mind and what it's doing. And then we'll invite the mind onto a wholesome track. We will do the practice of gladdening the mind. So I hope you're comfy and able to come home to breathing. Breathing in, I'm aware of breathing in. And breathing out, I'm aware of breathing out. Making sure the out-breath is really an out-breath, so the in-breath can drop itself deep into our body. Gladdening the mind is the capacity to consciously and carefully shift the focus of our mind, our thoughts, from the path of suffering to a wholesome direction, a path of goodness, a path of virtue, a path of happiness. Become aware of your eyes. Bring your breath energy up to your eyes. Bring all your focus through the breath to your eyes. Feel the shape of your eyes with your awareness. The right eye, the left eye, both eyes. Maybe gazing down in front of you with them open slightly or with them gently closed. Aware of the eyes, and they are seeing colors, quite dark colors if your eyes are closed, but colors, shapes, shadows and light. And now become aware just behind the eyes of the mind, thinking. It is interpreting and discussing, labeling what the eyes see. Now invite your mind, the chatter of the mind, to calm and to quiet. Breathing in, dear mind, calm and quiet. Become still. I would like to focus on my eyes and simply seeing. So fully focus on the sense perception of seeing. And now let the eyes rest and bring your awareness to your ears. Bring all your focus through the breath to the ears. Your ears hearing, listening to vibrations and sounds. And become aware how just behind the ears there is the mind, thinking, interpreting, discussing, labeling, and invite the mind to calm, to quiet, to become still. Dear mind, now rest please. I would like to listen, to simply hear. And now releasing the ears from awareness, bring your awareness to your nose and your tongue. Breathing in, smelling and tasting in the nose and the mouth. The scent and the fragrance of life in this moment. The taste and the savor of life in the mouth in this moment. And notice the mind wanting to take those sensations, to interpret them, to label them. Oh, dear mind, now would you please come to quiet, become still with me so that I can return and focus back on my nose and tongue, on simply smelling and tasting. And now releasing the smell and the taste. Begin to send your awareness down through neck and shoulders, out hands to fingers, down through hips and legs to feet. Aware of the whole body in this moment and how it feels. Breathing out, sensing, feeling the whole body. The contact with cushion, with chair. The sensation on the skin resting on the fabric of clothing. And become aware of there is the mind taking those sensations, labeling them, interpreting them. Dear mind, I invite you now to rest so that I can simply feel and bring focus back to the sense perception of the body feeling. And now finally, release the body, release the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body, and turn inwards completely to the mind, to the place inside, deep in here where thoughts arise. And clearly from this place, this awareness of thinking arising, this space of thinking inside you, offer this thought. May all beings everywhere be well, be happy, and be safe. Turn your mind towards this thought. May all beings everywhere be well, be happy, be safe. Open your heart to feel this thought and what it means. Let it reverberate throughout your whole being. Make your mind happy with love. Use your inner strength and your power to gladden your mind. May all beings everywhere be happy and safe. May they live in security and in peace. May they transform their suffering. May they all be well. May all beings everywhere be well. Dear friends, the practice of gladdening the mind is there for us to strengthen our capacity to consciously care for ourselves and for the world. And if we learn how to bring our mind from habit energy and from dispersion, from the path of suffering, towards the path of well-being, if we develop that capacity and become strong in it, right, the effect is tremendous for us and for everyone around us. This exercise of calming the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body, right, of dropping into our senses And really recognizing that the mind wants to chatter and run with senses, and just inviting it to calm, 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 right? We're really there, and then we take it and we practice metta meditation. Yeah, this may all beings be well. That is a beautiful thought filled with love. That is the wholesome path, right? There are many such thoughts that you could take up to gladden your mind. It can be quite simple. It can be turning towards those smiling eyes of your friend and family, turning towards the flower, turning towards any beautiful, any enlivening, any life-giving thing, right? And here the practice of loving kindness meditation is what we turn to. And our heart then can blossom open with that thought. And it's important to really understand that our heart and our mind are not two separate things here, right? We develop awareness of our mind to help calm the agitation and the suffering, but through that, the ability to open our heart. When we are closed down in stress, in trauma, in suffering, our heart is closed down too. And we suffer because we are out of touch with our own heart, our love, right? And others around us cannot benefit from us either because our heart is closed. And you all know what it's like, right? To try to be there with people when you don't really have the space, when your heart is kind of locked up. And this practice is about undoing that, opening, unwinding all those layers of stress and trauma that have been transmitted to us, and opening that space so our heart can blossom full with real love and real presence again. This is the real gift that we have to give to humanity, each one of us. Out of that sort of practice, that's when social situations change. That's when beautiful policy is introduced. That's when helpful legislation is passed, right? It comes from there. Right? We really have to do this work inside of de-stressing, opening that locked up heart to a place where it can flow and breathe with love and understanding once again. Gladdening the mind is not a silly practice, right? It is that step of saying, okay, I'm going to be present with what I've got, and now I'm going to turn. I'm going to turn in the new direction. And I'm going to water the seeds of the path of understanding and love in my life, right? I hope this is helpful. This is something that we can really serve ourselves with our practice of breathing. You know, that breath is in the body, it's in the felt experience, but it's also our mind, right? It's all there. It's time for me to stop talking according to the schedule and to make a space. I think we're going to have a short break for some mindful movements. I'm not sure exactly who's going to guide those mindful movements. It's not going to be me. And then Dharma sharing time before the lunch break. It's been wonderful to be with you for the last hour plus. I hope that the energy of the retreat is supportive for you. And even with the distance between us in terms of space, and not just me and you, but all of us, each one of us, right? You are still able to drop into the Sangha here, right? Let these images, these faces of your Sangha siblings do some of that work of softening and opening the boundaries around the heart, right? There you all are, helping to strengthen me, helping to stabilize me. We're doing this together. And in that way, we won't feel the isolation, the loneliness, or the separation of our current, social dynamic that we're in. Yeah. Thank you, friends.